Hello everyone, Fiona from Honouring ME Crochet, and I'm here today to show you how to do some simple joins with granny squares. I've made a few little ones here. Sorry, just adjust my camera a little bit. So this request has come from Teresa in my group. We had a few requests this week, so I put in a poll and this one was the most requested. So coming up in some future ones, we'll have how to adjust gauge and also some tapestry crochet. But for today, we're going to show some simple ways to join a granny stitch. Now, the ones I'm going to show are ones that I have used or I would use. There are many, many more. So these are just examples and probably some of the best ways to go when you're just starting out. When you're more comfortable with the stitches and you've joined a few and you want to expand more, then I definitely investigate more. So the examples I'm going to show are just using I guess they call it a whip stitch. I just call it sewing. Also with a slip stitch or with single crochet. You can also do join as you go, which honestly I haven't done that with a granny square. I've done a sort of version of it with a different square where I joined with a border. It looked quite pretty, but I won't show that here today. I'll only show these simple ones. The way you join it is going to depend on what look you're wanting. So if you're wanting a seamless look, so you want the squares to look joined together like this, without an obvious seam, then I would go with the sewing them together or a slip stitch from the back. If you're happy to see the border, which is my preference most of the time, depending on what it is. In a garment, I have used the sewing so that they were seamless, but when it comes to blankets, I tend to make it an obvious border. But with that, you could do single crochet or even a half double crochet I've done, depending on how raised you're happy to have the border. So to start with, I will show sewing. So when you're going to sew them, you want to put the right sides together and you're going to want to sew through. You can choose to sew through both loops, but in this example, I can do that. If you sew through both loops, then you're going to hide some of the stitch. I would prefer, and I'll show you that, prefer to sew through the back loop only. And that way, when you turn it back, it's going to look more like it's sitting together. The main reason I don't choose sewing very often is that you should choose a length of yarn to start with. So you've got to cut it. Whereas if you're doing slip stitch, you don't have to do that. You're not wasting so much yarn. I also trust my crochet skills more than my sewing skills. So for this one, you would start in a corner. You can see I've got right sides together. I don't know if you can tell the difference between a front and a back. So the green one is showing you the back and the pink one showing you the front. Okay, so I'm going to put right sides together. And I've got some, I'm not cutting this because I want to use the yarn for more things later. I'm going to start in a corner. Just make sure you even match up your stitches because you're going to want to make sure that they're together. So for this granny square, I've got 3 chains in the corner. So I would start in the middle chain. I've then got the 3 double crochet, and between each I've got a chain stitch. So I'm going to work into that as well. So you would simply just start with the middle one and just pull through and then just weave. So I'd go from front to back and just weave your way through those stitches. And just continue that. It might be a bit quicker technique. You'd probably want to knot that as well or sew that in later. That's why I don't trust my sewing technique. I was always cutting corners when I sewed. Okay, so just continue. So making sure you're only grabbing that back loop of both. And I can show partway through if I took both loops. Okay, so you've got that. So the back, you can see, you're going to see stitches like that. I've used a contrasting color. Now the other thing, if you're making a blanket and you don't want that seam, then pick one of the colors of the square that you're joining together. So you could pick green or pink, and then it would be even less obvious. And then when you pull them together, you're going to have them join like that. And I quite like it. It's nicer when it's in the one color because you've got the border from the front loop that you didn't use. Kind of adds a nice little thing through the middle. Whereas if I do some now with, what was I doing? If I go through both loops just to show you comparison on the same piece. So this one, I've got a tail there, that's annoying. Ignore my tails. That's what happens when you don't cut the yarn first. Okay, so then continuing in the same direction, you want to pull it tight as you go as well. I didn't pull it particularly tight in this occasion. I'm working through both loops. Might get a firmer seam this way. Yeah, how well you can see. Am I getting my hands in the way? Okay, I'll just do a couple more. Okay. So just showing, so we started off doing back loop only, then I've done some that are together, so you can see it's harder to hide that stitch. So if you're going to do both loops together, you really do want to keep it with one of the matching colors, which is why I prefer the back loop. It's that little bit less obvious. Okay, so I'm going to pull that all out. Let me take the end off. So the next one I'll show you, now I've got to unpick it, is going to be slip stitch. Excuse me while I unpick my work. So this is the thing, if you're not sure what way you want to join, you can always practice with some squares before you decide. And I know I've done that when I made a poncho with Granny Squares. And I trialed a few before I decided which join I was going to settle on, as I wanted to make sure I was happy with the final piece. And that's the magic of crochet. It's not so hard to undo your work. Okay. Excuse me, hands out of sync. All right, so do the same with the slip stitch. Now with this, you could work on the top or the back, depending on how you want it to look. So I'll show you to start with. So if you're going to work through the back, then again, you want to have the right sides together. And I would just work through the back loops only as well. So same as you did with the sewing, make sure they're all aligned up. This is how I join mine, whether it's right or not, who knows how I do it. So just pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through, and then just do your slip stitch. How well you're seeing that through just the back loops only. This I feel would be is a firmer, more secure way to join than sewing. And of course, you're not having to cut the length of yarn first, so it's a bit neater in that respect. Might not be quite as fast, but it's not always about speed. Okay. Just slip stitch through the two, pull it up, pull it through. And see, it looks a lot nicer. I think it'd be less likely to pull loose. Sorry. Okay, just through that back loop, through that back loop. If we see then through the other side, again, if you don't want to see the stitching, then just make sure you use one of the same colors that you're joining there with. If you do want to see it, then fine. Okay. Now you could also do that on the top. So if you're going to do it on the top, you'd put the back sides together And I would probably work through both loops if I was going to work through the top with a slip stitch. So with that one, let me get a fresh side since I've stretched them. So there you could start, just put it through the chain space in the corners and slip stitch. Okay, and then I would work through both loops. Okay. Struggling tonight. Okay, so you just work through both loops on the top there. And then what you're going to end up with is what looks like a chain across the top. Oh, that's my chain space there. I'm going too high for you. Okay, through those two loops. I have to say, it's been a while since I've made a granny square, and I sat and made them this morning. There really is something to making. And I've just made the plain granny. So this can apply to any granny square you're using. See, so in that method, not really my preferred, but again, I'd probably, if I was going to do slip stitch, I would use a colour that's matching. You're going to end up with a slightly raised join there, but they'll be nice and secure. Again, I'd probably do it from the right sides together. Okay, so then my preferred method is, again, back sides together, and I would do single crochet. Before I do that, though, I tend to put a border first that's so I'd put a single crochet border around each square in the color I was joining with. So in this case, I'd give them all a white border, and then I would join that. In this example, that's not going to happen. So again, we're going to have wrong sides together. So we're working on the top. You can decide if you want to work through both loops or not. And then you're just going to do your single crochet, which of course, if you're talking UK terms, you want to be using a double crochet. Okay. So then this one will end up a bit more raised across the top because it is, of course, a taller stitch. Where am I? Matching them up. I'm not making it look very easy, am I? Okay, so then in the chain space. Now, if you wanted to do join as you go, you would save your last round until you're ready to join. The first one, you do the full round, and then all the ones that you join on after, you'll do the final round and then slip stitch to the other piece to make it join. Depends on the granny square or the motive as to how effective that can look. Again, I've done it with I don't know if you'd call it. I'm not matching these up very well. You can growl at me for that. But see, with that one, you end up with a little raised border, which I quite like. But I think it looks more effective if you've got the white border first before you join them. But that's essentially it. So hopefully that helped out a little bit for those that haven't joined yet. As you can see, there is just something so sweet about a granny. So I'm going to continue and make a blanket out of these eventually because I quite had fun with that. They look cute as a patchwork blanket. Now, if you've been following me on social media, you'll know that my Hooked on Crochet Club is coming very, very soon. I am hoping to open the doors in a couple of weeks for some foundation clubhouse members. So if you're interested, head over to my page to find the links you need to get on my wait list. But that's it for today. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I'll catch you later.